Hello, good morning, good afternoon to all of you out in the audience. Thank you for joining us today for the 5th episode of Screens Unscripted. This series of Fireside Chats is meant as an opportunity to explore innovations and trends in digital signage and display technology with industry subject matter experts like our guest today. I see some familiar names out in the audience, so for those of you returning, welcome back. I'm not sure why you're subjecting yourself to this again, but we certainly appreciate it. Oh, wait, I shouldn't say that out loud. My apologies. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Jonathan Braun. I'm a principal at Braun Consulting. I'm the director of the Digital Signage Experts Group, and I'm on the board of directors for the Digital Signage Federation. Before we begin and we get to who you actually want to hear talking about things today, I do want to make sure I thank Sony, our sponsor for this series, and they're also an advisory council member to the DSF. And without them, we couldn't make this work, so greatly appreciate it. So thank you to our friends at Sony. Today, we do have a very special guest, as I've hinted at, but real quickly before I ask him to introduce himself, I want to do a bit of housekeeping for all of you out there in the audience who are not familiar with how these things run. First of all, if you hadn't gathered from the message you got from GoToWebinar when we started, everybody is on mute. That's going to make things run a little more smoothly, so no heckling, or actually do, it doesn't matter, we can't hear you anyway. And please use the chat or Q&A boxes. They're going to be on the right-hand side of your screen unless you moved it, which point then I can't really help you. I'm not psychic, but feel free to go ahead and send us any questions, messages, any feedback. I will go ahead and share those with our guest when we get to Q&A at the end of our discussion. So I'll facilitate that for everybody. We are recording this session, so a recording will be sent to you. You'll get an automatic link from GoToWebinar after we wrap up our talk today. But Sony is also going to be hosting these on their YouTube channel. If you'd like to share that with any of your coworkers who couldn't make it today, we'll be more than happy to provide that for you. Also, this is a continuing and ongoing series, discussions with industry luminaries like our guest today. So please do stay tuned for future episodes. And if you do have any suggestions, please, by all means, we'd love to hear more about what kind of topics you'd like us to cover, or if there's somebody you'd like us to invite on the show, feel free. We're more than happy to do that. We really appreciate feedback. Okay, to what we actually want to talk about today. I'm done with my intro. We can actually move on. We have a very, very special guest today with us from Uniguest. And as always, and I've said this in every session, I really am looking forward to our discussion because our topic today is a really important one, audience engagement. And that has been a recurring theme that seemed to come up every time, regardless of topic that we get into on these shows. So that's going to be great. So first, I'd like to thank our special guest, Matt. Thank you for joining us. And I'd like to give you a chance to introduce yourself to the audience, maybe tell us a little bit about what you and your organization at Uniguest do for those who aren't familiar.
Oh, sure. Jonathan, first, thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite here today to be on your show. And thanks to Terrence at Sony for sponsoring this. Really great to be here with you. Again, for the audience, I'm Matt Gaucher. I'm the president and CEO at Uniguest. I've been with Uniguest for about 8 years now. Time flies when you're having fun. Prior to that, I was head of the cybersecurity division at SunGard. Before that, I was a consultant at Booz Allen, and I started my career as an Air Force guy, working on some kind of early days military AV projects. So I guess quick background on Uniguest. When I joined Uniguest about 8 years ago, it was a very different business than it is today. We're essentially an IT service provider for hotels. We had about 20% of the staff we have today. We were totally focused on the US. We really only had one product, really only focused on hotels, as I mentioned. Fast forward to today, we're a digital engagement software business. We're powering well over 1 million screens across the world. Our solutions focus on a range of offerings from digital signage, IPTV, enterprise video, various types of engagement apps, all powered by a back-end software CMS. Hospitality, of course, remains a critical market for us and a growing market for us, but that's down to about 30% of our revenue.
Okay.
The rest, the other 70%, I should say, is hospitals, it's retail locations, corporate offices, stadiums, senior living communities, universities, and more. And we're driving about a third of our revenue from outside the U.S. We deliver solutions in about 150 countries. So kind of excited about the evolution of our business over the past few years, and I guess probably most importantly excited about really the future of kind of where digital engagement and digital signage is moving over the next few years, just because we see so many potentials, so many opportunities, new use cases coming up every day. Our customers are brilliant, coming up with ideas and ways they want to use the product, integrate in with what they're trying to accomplish from a business objective standpoint. And John, I appreciate you as an industry expert, just kind of driving it forward as well. So thanks for having me on the show.
No, thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I know I was familiar with Uniguest. We actually did some consulting work with the organization, I think, before you joined. It's been quite a while. So I was always familiar with what you all did from the hospitality side. But now I love hearing about that transformation. I know there are some CMS brands in there that some of our audience may know, like Triple Play and One Land, that are part of your overall family of products today. And I like seeing that evolution, and I love hearing the story, because I think that also paints a bigger picture of how the industry is evolving from the efforts of organizations like yours. But like you mentioned, it's really the customers are coming up with really interesting new ways to take and apply our technology. And I think that's making us stretch a little bit. And with that, digital signage has become kind of so pervasive today. We've had so many different perspectives from, we at least on the show here, we've talked about corporate communication in the past. We had emergency services and command and control as another focus that we kind of talked about. We see it everywhere. So it seems like most companies are building it into their communication and brand strategy today as part of kind of an overall omni-channel approach. And I love the term audience engagement. You brought it up. It was also in the description. So spoilers for everybody in the audience. That's what we're going to be talking about the rest of today. But, this seems to be pretty important. We're looking at trying to drive deeper connections with our audiences. So how important is this to signage overall, just in general? I mean, what's your take? And let's see, kind of use that as a place to start.
I mean, in terms of delivering content to the audience in a way that they can best use it, best make decisions off of it, best help whoever the messenger is. I think it's probably a really good way to start out. I think what you're describing is really kind of what the definition of digital engagement is. It's trying to deliver content or message through technology, through a digitized landscape, to each audience member. And it's challenging. There are lots of other distractions in the public space. You want to get your audience to engage and get information, potentially monetize that through advertisements or revenue upsells. You want to drive marketing campaigns. You want to create a brand connection or brand loyalty. So that really depends on kind of the business objective, which varies across the different industry verticals that we work in. But really that finding out how the technology helps the content reach the audience is what digital engagement is all about. From my standpoint, really, every member of an audience engages, slightly differently. And that's one of the reasons why we've expanded out to, many different types of endpoints that we support, from, digital signs, of course, TVs, interactive kiosks, music solutions, voice solutions, mobile app solutions, kind of trying to meet the customer or the audience where they are. And then I would also offer that, just within kind of, the various verticals that we support, you can see how there would be, different business objectives. So in some verticals, it's about forming a connection or getting information to that audience, right? So think of, a hotel lobby, for an example. There are, maybe fewer employees to interface with a guest or a customer. And so using technology as a force multiplier to really, connect with an audience, connect with a guest, get them information, get them to feel more loyalty to your brand. And that aspect of it, we view as critical, and really critical for all types of digital signs. Then there's other areas where, think of retail locations where there's almost a more quantifiable outcome that our customers are aiming for, and that's getting a buying decision and upselling revenue, or driving monetization of advertisements. And so at the end of the day, though, it's still the same technology, and it's still the same objective, which is to get the content to the right person with the right context, to get those decisions to happen in a way that is in the best interests of the messenger. So it's certainly complicated across these different verticals, but we've seen, just with our customer base, just so many brilliant ideas on how to land the content in a way that helps influence that audience member. So it's really exciting, kind of where it's heading, what direction it's heading in, and we're excited to continue to support it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on a couple of things I want to explore a little bit further. And by the way, this is going to sound like we actually planned this, folks. I promise we didn't. This is Screens Unscripted. It's just when we get the really smart people to come on here and actually share their knowledge, it always ends up kind of hitting the same high points. So you just sit back and enjoy the ride, guys.
Jonathan's giving me too much credit there, but go on, sorry.
Oh, no, absolutely not. You hit some really important concepts there, where you mentioned a couple of things that I think seem to always come up whenever I'm having these kinds of conversations with any of the industry leaders like yourself. We've had on the show. We've ended up talking about things like audience engagement, not necessarily calling it that, but you used a couple of really important terms there, like context, and one that I use a lot in the educational programs that we offer, like the Digital Signage Certified Expert that DSEG does. We talk about relevance all the time. But before we jump into exploring that a little bit further, you mentioned a couple of verticals, and I think that's an important thing to kind of discuss a little bit more for our audience, because we've got people from all different walks here listening to us today and watching us today. I think exploring the verticals might be a little important, because I think our audience is probably automatically jumping, especially when we have some end users where they're starting to jump immediately to thinking about, oh, retail, because, oh, well, digital signage, that's about retail ads, or maybe digital menu boards for QSR, even though that's kind of hybridized across different, like you mentioned, stadiums, where there are elements of both of those in a sports environment in most cases. So even though it's kind of hybridized, I think it really does go beyond that. Like you mentioned, hospitality would be great. You mentioned that your team is focusing on healthcare as another key vertical. So it really is applicable beyond just the really immediate, obvious verticals, right?
Absolutely. Healthcare is one I think that's most interesting to us. Uniguest supports close to 200 hospitals across the world, primarily in North America. And all the things that you mentioned in terms of retail may apply, right? Menu boards, digital signage, ad monetization, things of that nature certainly apply to a hospital campus. But there's also the in the room kind of patient TV aspect, or anything that interfaces directly with the patient. And that's a whole nother set of business objectives and challenges, where one, you're trying to provide the patient with the appropriate information. You're trying to provide entertainment, of course. A lot of our in-room solutions for hospitals or hotels or senior living is driven toward delivering entertainment solutions. You want to provide educational and training platforms, since a lot of times various surgeries or whatever the patient's in there for can be driven more effectively. The recovery can be driven more effectively with the appropriate training and education. And a lot of times that's now driven through digital signs and TVs and our interactive solutions. And then the end result is, what the hospital is attempting to do is typically drive a better patient outcome, and ensure they're doing it in a way that's most cost effective. And so these are, similar challenges where digitization of the public space can help on all of those fronts, help get the patient the information they need. They can order, food and beverage when they need it. They can, watch a particular movie when they want to. They can deliver, training videos, which will help them, improve their recovery. And so that's kind of like, the full set of capabilities being brought to bear to impact a ton, many different business objectives. And you can see how that would also apply to, what senior living communities are attempting to accomplish. But it goes back to what I mentioned in the, in my first point around, the business outcome might be different based on the type of customer that we're working with. But the way to deliver that message and that influence, right, getting the right content in the right context to each audience member, is really what, helps on all of these business outcomes, business objectives. And so, we really like that space, the healthcare space, because it's an area where really the full capabilities of kind of digitization of the public space can be brought to bear and support, many different types of business objectives.
Yeah, that really does make sense, because I think many of us, like, nobody ever enjoys going to the doctor, but I think many of us kind of overlook the idea that a hospital really is running like a business. And it's got a lot of the same types of, and I love the fact that you're using business outcomes, because I use the same phrase a lot. So I always, it's kind of a little gold star and a little checkbox of, yes, that's awesome. Thank you for the validation, because I think that's really important for people to understand, is that's what's really key in signage, is we're trying to accomplish business outcomes, right? So, people don't think about the hospital being that kind of an environment, but it really is similar to a hotel in a lot of ways, where you've got a guest, you've got your patient, and they are your customer, and you're trying to drive a better experience, and you can really have a huge impact on their outcomes. If you keep them entertained, you keep them informed, it's more comfortable, it's a better overall experience, you get better satisfaction. Unfortunately, you may get repeat business. We want to try and avoid that part, right? But you may. And there is a for-profit motivation sometimes, depending on the organization, to maybe upsell additional procedures or promoting brands. And that kind of shows, kind of like I talk about with hospitality sometimes, you go to a resort in Vegas, you're getting a lot of kind of hybridization of, there's QSR, there's retail, there's the in-room experience, there's different aspects to it that also hit different verticals throughout digital signage. There's an aspect of transportation where you're dealing with wayfinding, right? And all of this drives that customer experience, regardless of who your customer is. So if we're talking about business outcomes, I'm gonna go back to my other favorite word, which is relevance. And I love that you also described it in terms of context, because I think that's something people miss. One of the biggest strengths, and this has come up in every discussion that I've had on this series, because it's so critical to digital signage, one of the biggest strengths digital signage has, as we talk about digitizing these public spaces, is the ability to deliver those types of messages, right? Where I can get the message to Jonathan or to Matt that we want to see, or that is relevant to us. But I think to explore it further, it really is about context to drive engagement, isn't it? Where I don't just have to get you the right message or a relevant message, I have to get it to you at the right time. Fair?
I think that's definitely fair. And some of our solutions, like some of the in-room examples we've been given, our customer knows exactly who's on the other end of that message. They can tailor the content. If this is let's say it's a hotel, if it's a loyalty member who travels frequently, they love playing golf, they can use that information to push a message or try to, upsell based on what they know about that, the person on the other end of that. They can also use, environment awareness, right? So if it's raining, we're not, even though this person's an avid golfer, we're not going to recommend the golf course. If it's cold out, maybe we recommend the coffee bar or hot chocolate or something. So that in those cases, they can get, very surgical in their recommendations. And some of our other solutions, like where it's, more of a pure public space, oftentimes I don't exactly know who that audience member is, but you can still find ways to connect with them. So a retail location where this person is spending significant period of time looking at a particular product, or this person has picked up a particular product, or this person based on an application on their phone that they are a rewards member and they come here regularly. That's all information that can be used to make to deliver content that is most useful for the audience. Because the worst thing that you want to do is throw a bunch of messages out there that that just don't land. It just doesn't move the needle. It's not helpful.
Right.
To the audience member, and they typically would just move on at this point, which is also why I think kind of that programmatic content is so important now, and that it stays fresh, it's easily updated, it's ready for the audience to receive it, because the worst thing that we see out in the field is when there's just content that's obviously weeks or months old. It just it just turns off the audience immediately, and they move on, and it shows that the person on the other end of that message isn't really using this forum to what it should be used for.
Yeah, it's like getting an out of date message on social media. You're scrolling through Instagram or whatever, and you get a post that's 3 months old, or I'm on LinkedIn and I'm seeing stuff that's a month back that's now at the top of my feed. Right. And it makes me go, do I really care about this? Am I gonna bother, keeping reading, unless I'm just really bored of doom scrolling, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's really important.
We're all guilty of occasionally.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, come on, that's why these algorithms are so good at getting that dopamine pop in your brain. Of course, that's kind of what signage does too, because you're getting that much punchier message. I kind of joke around with people that digital signage is one of the most potent behavior modification tools we have that doesn't involve pharmaceuticals. So it's pretty clever how these things get used, right? So I know that we've kind of talked around it a little bit, and I want to just dig in a little bit more on your input. So we've discussed what kind of engagement we can have, and some different ways to kind of bring that about, because we're delivering that right message, right time, right place. And that's what digital signage is really all about. But it also, you hinted at some other aspects of it. Like I used the term omni-channel earlier, and we were talking about like distractions. So this really does generate a lot of important data. And so there's got to be other tools that you would think that an entity, whether we're talking about a hospital or we're talking about a retail environment, we're talking about a stadium, that they would need to use or could use to generate more information on a audience member to better target them, right?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, the organizations that are doing the most and getting the most value from their digital signage landscape, whether that's a small outfit with 3 or 4 menu boards, or a mega corporation with 10, 20,000 screens across many different locations, the ones that are getting the max value are the ones that are tying the content to the outcome, and that outcome is probably easiest measured based on the cash register, right? If we display this content and it turns into an upsell of a particular product, or if we go moment of exclusivity across the whole location, and all of a sudden
or pulls stock out of the back that you wanted to get rid of, right? Because this is kind of why retail was one of the earliest adopters, because they had the easiest path to ROI, because you could use point of sale data directly to drive campaign feedback. But
that's exactly right.
There's more to it than that with other things, because I know one of the questions I think everybody's going to have is how do you measure audience engagement? And I think things like you mentioned, loyalty apps, camera analytics, like you were talking about, like shelf type cameras. That have been seeing deployments of shelf systems where it's not tracking the audience per se, it's tracking physical engagement with product and things like that, right?
I think that's exactly right. So it's talked about the cash register, tying back to inventory, tying back to buying decisions. That's where it's easiest. One vertical that we support that the outcomes in some ways are the most important is our senior living communities. where the point of our technology there is all the things we talked about. Try to, provide information, provide entertainment, get information on the menu, on the, what's for lunch today, when the mail comes in, what activities are happening. But there's also a way through, our CMS where folks can make connections, with other residents who have the same interests from an activity standpoint, from this is they love playing tennis or pickleball at this time, and they find others who are interested in it at the same time. They love going, love going to see the local museums, and they want to find other folks that are interested in the same things. And so that's an example where, look, this isn't it's not directly tied back to the cash register, but what we're trying to accomplish with, the digital signage, IPTV solution, and then these engagement apps that pull in some of this activity information is connecting residents with each other. Because residents who are connected and have great friends are more likely to stay there. That's a business objective from the community. But they're also going to have a more fulfilling life because most of these locations are out there fighting isolation. They're fighting other things that they already are susceptible to, and so they're getting the content with the right context to the right person. You can imagine how that's even more important in some ways because it's altering life outcomes. And
that personal touch.
Yeah, I don't want to exaggerate, but it's connecting folks with their community through the digitization of the public space, and so that's one where you asked about, obviously, point of sale information tied back to inventory, driving purchase decisions, driving marketing campaigns, can help drive incremental revenue and then help change the buying patterns of folks who are in your store, what they're going to do the next week when they're back. Certainly helps, but the senior living one I just think is a unique one, and it causes us to think through kind of how different pieces of content land with different types of audiences, different ages of audiences. We have to think through any screen that requires remote control interaction, and how the dexterity of an individual can relate to that. Any eye acuity challenges. So it really kind of pushes the envelope for us in terms of trying to.
I resemble that remark.
Yeah. It pushes the envelope for us to think through, how this content is going to be received, and then looking for ways to measure if it had the end results that we wanted from it. And then working with our customers on that front. And most of this goes back to the analytic. We need to collect the information, what content was displayed at what time, and then what other outcome. Again, the most straightforward one is an upsell at the cash register, but what other outcome were we targeting, and did it happen? If it didn't happen, scrap that content, it didn't work, or tweak the content, and then have a just a transparent view into it. If this content had a great result, we're gonna pound it over and over again. If it didn't, why didn't it work, and what would be deliver the proper outcome for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also think that and I love the idea of the senior living, because I really hadn't thought of the focus the same way, because that's very similar to a hospitality environment, but crossed with healthcare. So it kind of fits. But then also I would think that some of these same concepts would apply more to education as well. Because when you think about a university, yes, the environment is different. Some of the concepts are different, but the audience engagement would be kind of similar, where you're trying to deliver an experience to your customer, the student, while also aiding your staff, the faculty, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, the universities are trying to deliver lectures and other type of content to their students in all kind of different forums, especially now in a post-pandemic world, right, where remote classes are normal, remote work is very acceptable. So the university, they have, all the same AV digitization challenges as any other large campus business, right? So digital signs, getting information across, getting branding across, maybe monetizing it in some cases for advertisement purposes. But then also in the classroom, capturing lectures, getting that video in the hands of someone who's not there, leveraging that with or intersplicing that with other outside content that helps you kind of reinforce the message of the instructor. That really kind of leverages it. All this really comes down to video, right? We're seeing a shift from, older generations, maybe didn't use as much. Younger generations, they receive the vast majority of their news, their feeds, information on whatever's going on, current events in the world. They get that all from video now. Video is playing a mega role out there, and so our customers want to also leverage that. When you think through digital signs and IPTV, how can they get the same lift from that kind of video revolution that we've seen? And I think education is a kind of a ground zero for that. Pulling in other videos to hammer home the points of the lecture, putting the lecture on video, sharing that across different environments, putting that on static screens, putting it on interactive screens. There's a lot of it all depends on the objective that they're working toward, but we see a ton of success in that space. And we also are starting to see a lot more success in that as you go down to school districts, K through 12, and school districts. We've had some good success in that in the U.S. and in the U.K. And so we think these solutions can, across kind of education writ large, can really make an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to change just a little topic change. By the way, for everybody playing Screens Unscripted bingo, because I know there's a few of you who've been in there, analytics came up already. So we hit certain buzzwords in like every call. So I love it when this comes up. So I'm going to do another one though. And everybody out in the audience is going to expect this. So buzzword warning, folks, AI. It comes up everywhere. It's been overused. I have to bring it up if somebody doesn't automatically mention it. So what role do you think AI is going to play in helping us continue to improve our audience engagement as we develop? Because I wanted to ask the question about where do you see the market going, and I'm willing to bet that's going to be part of it. So let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, as a business, we're kind of moving toward kind of an AI first approach. And so we are thinking through kind of, before I get to the CMS side of the question, we're thinking through where AI can help us. So when you think about building product, QA, oftentimes a monotonous task, figuring out how AI can really drive the speed and the accuracy from a QA standpoint, as well as kind of building various libraries of code, help us move faster on the R&D front. And then on the support side, with a million plus endpoints out there, we need to be able to react faster to this estate when there's, if a screen is down, if a screen is, not displaying the content the way we need it to. We need to leverage AI to move faster to make sure, because a screen that's not playing the right content or that's not operational is helping no one and delivering no message. So using AI to pinpoint where screens are having those kind of issues and responding to it, helping our support process move faster, be more proactive, helping more self-service for our customers that know what they're doing. They can get the information when they need it and resolve it on site faster than we can if we're remote. So I think AI, just from an internal standpoint and helping our business and helping us manage our estate of screens, can help us be much more proactive and move, really improve the pace of our operations. From the CMS standpoint, I think there are tremendous opportunities that we're exploring on that front. Content generation is a key point for many of our customers. They need to create engaging content that folks are interested in and actually want to take in the message that it's that it's trying to deliver, and they want to have enough content that doesn't stay stale, that it meets the needs of all.
Speed of generation becomes.
Exactly.
If I've got a bot, I can task with making me a content spot. It doesn't take the human part away. So, you still have to have a person who can come up with the prompt and the concept and message, but being able to generate that content more quickly for somebody who's not necessarily skilled at it, like me. I'm really not. I don't do pretty pictures. I put them up on the screen. But yeah, I get that.
I think that's exactly right. And so that's how we're starting to build or leverage AI kind of within our products, and looking for ways to, again, it's not replacing what the customer or the admin would have done before. It's helping them go faster at pushing out content. And even before AI, we were doing that through various content libraries and recommended solutions for depending on the objective of the administrator or their audience or the vertical they were in. But AI, I think, can just will help that just move faster, which in the end will make if you think of the screen as just a real estate for your business to drive business outcome, it'll just make that real estate more valuable if it can be updated faster, engage the audience based on responses it gets back, or different environmental changes, different changes of behavior at the cash register. If we can just move faster on that whole process, I think it would be very beneficial. And that's what we're building to. Our product team is spending a lot of time thinking through those challenges and making, it's easy to, have a quick chat GPT, integration that, helps some gimmick use, right? But, having a meaningful use where the content becomes more valuable and be updated based on, changing business dynamics, that's what we want to drive toward, and that's what we are driving toward.
Excellent. All right, so I know we're going to be coming up on time here in a little bit. I want to get to Q&A with our audience, but real quick before we do, not to put you on the spot, but I want to put you on the spot. So before we go to questions from our audience, we've been doing a little exercise with every guest we've had on the show. So we'd like to see, just Matt, in your opinion, what would be 2 to 3 key takeaways from our topic and our discussion today? We'd like to make sure that our audience takes away, whether they're watching it live or they've seen the recording. What do you think are 2 to 3 key items we want to make sure we share and leave them with?
I'll plug Uniguest here for a minute here.
Go for it.
Key takeaways from our view are our differentiators. We think the comprehensive nature of our cloud CMS, full digital signage, IPTV, casting, interactive kiosk, engagement apps is a winner in the market, and our ability to deliver across the globe with kind of proven operational excellence. I view that as a kind of a winning combination. So I think that's a key takeaway. Second key takeaway would be I think that the pace of change in the use cases that digital signs are being used for is going to dramatically increase in the next few years. It's been increasing really every year since I've been in this industry, and I think it's going to dramatically increase. And so that's both a positive in that I think there'll be continued proliferation of digital signs and screens in the field as use cases expand, but it'll also be a challenge in that there'll be more pressure on providers to meet the growing demands of a wider audience, an audience that wants all these things we talked about: quicker content delivery, more contextual content, triggered based on environmental factors and other points of data, generating analytics that can be used to then improve the cycle all over again. And so I think that's a key takeaway, and that's one of the things I'm probably most excited about. Is just like when I started in this space, a lot of digital signs were funded through, I would call it maybe discretionary budgets.
Right.
And they were kind of maybe in IT or AV, right? Kind of managed through that group.
Right.
And they still are to some degree, but the value of them has moved as I think businesses have been able to monetize or improve revenue, improve business outcomes. And so we see other teams throughout, marketing teams and advertisement teams and sales teams. We think that is going to continue, and it's going to drive more and more speed of expectation around content updates and things of that nature. And then the types of screens obviously are already changing in many ways. We talked about some of that here, and being able to deliver the right content, contextualized for the right audience, on the right screen, and hit at the right time when that business decision is trying to be made by that customer or guest or resident or employee. That's really, I think, the holy grail of trying to maximize the value of all these solutions. And so that's another key takeaway I would say that kind of excites me for the future of this industry, and the future of for Uniguest as well.
Excellent, excellent. So we got some great questions from the audience. I love that. I love it because we've had everybody be really engaged every episode so far, and they haven't let me down again. So thank you all out in the audience for some good ones. Although a couple of these are a little long, so these are questions, not novels, but we'll make it work. So the first one actually relates to healthcare. Can the in-room engagement with the patient be integrated with a medical digital diagnosis from a remote doctor? So mixing content for the patient, let me see, sorry, I gotta scroll. Mixing content for the patient with the digital medical data coming from the patient. There we go.
Yes, is the answer. So, the solutions in the space, need the basics, right? Integration with the EMR, EHR systems. So, the patient information, their medication expectations, dietary restrictions. So if someone's on a low sodium diet, they'll also order food and beverage from the cafeteria in our system, and our system won't allow them to go over certain sodium levels as an example. At the same time, I think perhaps what the question is getting at is, the explosion in telehealth has really increased, and that's happened in the hospital also, right? So, for especially a larger healthcare system where they want to maximize the value of their doctors and nurses from all the locations, and if they can't put that, say cardiologist in the room at a given time, they can still get them on the screen to have kind of an interface, and based on what comes back, through that gets entered, if it's inputted through our system, or otherwise it gets entered into kind of those medical electronic medical records, and the whole, kind of the whole cycle continues on again. So I think that's our telehealth solution integrated with our inpatient room TV is fairly new. We released that really earlier this year. We're seeing incredible interest in that, just because telehealth is also really an exciting new way to use a screen, and directly meeting the needs of a hospital trying to drive efficiency, as well as a patient trying to drive, effectiveness and simplicity. And so that's an area that I'm very excited about as we start to scale that out to more and more customers.
Absolutely. So I got another one here, and this is going to be great because this was like it was written for you specifically with your background. So I love it because we're going to ask about cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So some think that cybersecurity is really the biggest challenge for digital signage now. Yeah, I definitely think that's a concern. What aspect of that do you think the typical user of digital signage is not paying enough attention to? Ooh, that's a really good question.
That's a good one.
That.
I mentioned, way back early in my career, I set up some digital signage screens and when I was in the military, and we had the screens on a totally different network than anything else that ran on the main system, right? And so, it really, if it had some sort of issue, it would only hurt itself, right?
Yeah,
So if a screen gets, yeah, exactly. Fast forward to today, I mean, with the amount of information coming across these screens, the amount of integrations that have to be set up, take a hotel, you're integrating with the PMS system, so who's in the room, who's interacting with the TV, what they're doing. Then you're integrating with sales and catering solutions, so who's supposed to be in this meeting room, so you can welcome them. Then you're integrating with various the food and bev operations, so they can put in orders. They're putting in their credit cards potentially, or they're ordering on the room. So there's all these integrations that have kind of forced the screens back onto the kind of corporate core network, right? So now those, the digital signage, some of these are interactive. So the interactive users, I describe it sometimes where you have users on these systems. You need to protect them from, leaving personal data behind on an interactive device. You need to protect the network from them if they're malicious or trying to,
Sure.
It's an interactive system. And then you just have to protect kind of the overall network from any vulnerabilities in the system. So, from my view, I think it's just treated like, any other critical IT system. It needs to go through proper vulnerability analysis. You need to do pen testing every time you make a change, especially a major change. Your vendor needs to drive certifications like high trust, which then they've gone through a series of tests and validations, PCI, if there's transactions taking place across the systems. So I would say where I think that the question was asking about kind of what people are not paying attention to. Sometimes there's, we'll come across, a prospect that's still just kind of, putting a device, a set-top box on a network, viewing it like the old days where like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Maybe it's an old Windows player from, many moons ago, many versions ago. And in the old days, there probably was limited impact. Maybe it's on the coax network, but now it's on the IP network with all of your other corporate data. And so you don't want it to be a, kind of a bridge or beachhead into the rest of the network. So I just treat it with the same level of security compliance that you do all of your other critical systems. And I think that's, where the whole industry will have to head toward, because these systems are on the network and they're and need to be secured at the same level as everything else. Sorry for the long answer there.
No, that's a great one, and I 100% agree. I got one last question from the audience, then we'll wrap up. I want to make sure we hit, because it's kind of a run-on from that one. You touched on it. A few years ago, some said that using SoC, system on chip, for anybody who doesn't know the term, I'm assuming everybody in the audience does, was more of a problem for network security than using external media players. Is that mentality now obsolete, in your opinion?
I would think so. We as a business, really defer to our customers, right? So if they want to run the most high-powered content out there, they're probably going to need a media player that's, installed locally on the system. But for many customers, system on chip is great. It's easy. It's one less point of failure. It can power whatever it is you're trying to, whatever content you're trying to accomplish, and it works in many instances. It really comes down to the firmware on that SOC screen, as well as the firmware and software on that media player. Both need to be secured and patched and updated with the same level of rigor that you would do any other PC or server on your corporate network. And if that falls behind, and we certainly have environments that where we'll go meet with a prospect and say it's a hotel, and they'll want to install our product there, but we'll look at the TVs are running, very old firmware, or, there's legacy solutions out there. Those things need to be maintained like any other IT system, because it's really all connected together now. So, from my view, it's, I would defer to we have a dedicated security team at Uniguest. That would be a good question that I could follow up with them on. But, from my view, really, as long as you're validating everything, you're keeping your systems, including SOC screens, updated, I think they work and they would work fine from a security standpoint in almost every environment.
Perfect. Excellent. All right, well, I know we're at time. And Matt, first of all, I want to thank you for your time. I know how busy people like yourself are. There's nobody lazy in this industry, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and your experience with our audience and with myself. Really enjoyed the conversation. So first of all, I definitely want to thank you for your time. If anybody wants to learn more about Uniguest and all the different things that your team represents, where would be a good place for them to do that?
They can certainly go to uniguest.com. We have, almost all of our product literature listed out there. As I mentioned on the call, we serve a multitude of different types of customers, and we have different types of solutions for your needs. So, but I would start on the website and then certainly reach out to myself or anyone else in the organization for help or questions or comments.
Excellent. All right, well, I'd also like to thank our audience for attending. And of course, I have to thank our sponsor, our friends at Sony, for helping us produce this series. Really appreciate it. Definitely stay tuned. We're going to be having another episode coming up soon. So we'll be getting some information like that out to the audience. And again, Matt, thank you for your time. Really appreciate everybody being here today. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day and a very happy holidays with the holiday weeks coming up. So really appreciate everyone. So thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jonathan.